Good evening. Welcome to Patch Airlines. It's getting cold. In honor of the brisk weather, I have my sweatshirt on this evening. And just so everyone knows, that, let's see, which way does the hand go? That is the logo for Wooden Boat Magazine. That is a Viking ship seen from the front, known as the bow, on, looking at a Viking ship. So, you know, symbols and things around all the time. Everybody wants to know what's going on. What's he wearing? What does it mean? And I have all my ducks in a row, courtesy of my wife, who is New Hampshire Kate 2019 in the chat room. We are tonight broadcasting on the platform known as Twitch. As many of you know, as I announced on the last live stream, there we go. Our YouTube channel was suspended for live streaming privileges. They were taken away. I don't know if or when they will ever return. Apparently, they found a just horrible thing I did. I played an animation of some sort in a live stream way back in 2019, and they suddenly decided that there's a good reason to deny him his live streaming privileges. Oh well. So we always had Plan B, courtesy of Doug Diamond from Diamond Digital Media. He keeps the wheels on this aircraft, and Mr. Wilson is quickly building a hypersonic aircraft in honor of our new platform for Patch Airlines. We are flying at 40,000 feet this evening to get the big picture of what's going on. And we are going to be examining from that altitude the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC. We have their playbook, who's just published for COVID-19. So we're going to take the time, because this just came out, we're going to take the time to look at it in some detail, but as typical, I would like to give you the punchline first, and that is they are presenting not the microneedle array patch, but a delivery system, a route of administration for a vaccine, and as they cite in the playbook, it may be different versions of a vaccine, but delivered by way of a hypodermic needle, not the microneedle array patch. So we are going to apply the patch technique of 180. We're going to turn it 180 degrees around in order to reveal the truth about what is really going on here. In short, this is much ado about nothing on the part of the CDC. This is to give the media something to broadcast. This is something to keep the general public confused and off balance. And it will lead to this conclusion. This is my punchline, my headline. There will not be a hypodermic needle. There will be a microneedle array delivery, but perhaps not in the first round of vaccinations. And why? Well, I'll explain that as we go through the paper. They will eventually get to delivering the vaccine globally to 7.8 billion people by way of the microneedle array patch. Logistically, it's the only way it can be done. Logically, in their estimation, in a timely fashion, the only way it can be done. The microneedle array patch. They will claim, after they attempt the hypodermic needle delivery of one or more versions of vaccines, and they're already saying in the playbook there will be a second dose required, and they don't even have a vaccine, but they're saying in the playbook there will be a required second vaccine. Through the process of the Hegelian dialectic, their modus operandi, problem, reaction, solution, they want to get people so worked up in demanding a solution, just as I said back in 2013 about the MERS coronavirus. They will stir people up, stir up their fear, because the first round, perhaps even the second round of vaccinations, will be completely useless. In their own words. Now, they don't say that in the playbook, but they will eventually have to say, we could not accomplish a global vaccination program using traditional methods, which is the hypodermic needle and syringe route. And again, more details coming in this live stream. And they will get people so angry, so confused, and so fearful because the long promised vaccine or multiple versions of the vaccines will not be delivered efficiently, effectively, in a timely fashion. The government will fall back on its usual playbook, and that is incompetence. And that's by design. They want people to get angry. They want people to demand the vaccine, so they have to stir up the masses. They have to have people pointing the finger at not just the US government, but all governments and saying, you are incompetent, and a lot of other words they'll use. You are incompetent. Get your act together. Get us the vaccine. People are dying. It's still a pandemic. And for other reasons, they want to go back to work, they want to go back to school, they want to have their liberty back, their freedom of movement. They will demand and demand and demand. So we can expect that. But again, how can you say that 2 doses of a vaccine are necessary when, according to what CDC tells us, there has been no agreement on any vaccine? No vaccine has been developed. Again, we'll apply the 180 to that insofar as if they are claiming 2 doses, if the president is saying we must have distribution centers by October 1st, if we will have, the president is now saying in November, we will have a vaccine. How can those statements be made? How can these plans be drawn up in this fashion if they did not already, at the time that COVID-19 was human engineered, if at the same time they did not already have in place, prior to the release of COVID-19, the vaccine for it? Again, think about it logically. They would have to. Otherwise, they would be endangering themselves, those that were involved in releasing, which really is nothing more than a flu virus. And it's not even a flu virus on steroids. We've covered extensively the convoluted numbers, the conflated numbers. And now, Doug Diamond sent me a story just before we went live this evening that in Nashville, Tennessee, his home state, there's a lawsuit being brought against the city officials of Nashville because emails have been made public in which the public officials acknowledged that they suppressed the numbers of cases so as to continue to promote the shutdown, the lockdown, the quarantine. in the Nashville area. Just a tip of the iceberg example of how what is really just a flu vaccine has been inflated into a pandemic. It's an excuse. And we've covered that, and you know that extensively already. Okay? What we're going to cover is the CDC Playbook. And I just want to take a look in the chat room here real quick. I'm going to try to stay in the chat room screen as much as possible. We have, for the first time tonight, posted within the Patreon page the link to this live stream. So it'll be interesting to see who participates in the chat room from the general public. I know Twitch is a public platform, but purposefully I posted the link as a public posting within Patreon. So it'll be fun to see who all joins us this evening and participates in the chat. I want to thank everyone for your patience in making the move from YouTube over to Twitch. We had warned about this for months, and as I say, Doug Diamond from Diamond Digital Media, Diamond Disc Audio, had set this account up many months ago in anticipation of what has happened on YouTube. I don't really miss YouTube, but it is convenient for people who are searching for this information to find it on YouTube. Hopefully they'll begin to realize that it is also available on Twitch in terms of a live broadcast. We are following Doug's editing and sweetening, if you will, of the audio. He then posts this live stream to my YouTube channel, and I then make it public on YouTube. So it's still available there, and it's just, makes it convenient for people to find it. So with that much ado about nothing regarding YouTube, let's dive right into our scripture for this evening. Revelation 21, verse 5. And the one seated on the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. Then he said, Write this down, for these words are faithful and true. And he told me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give freely from the spring of the water of life. The one who overcomes will inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. Very familiar scripture. We apply it in the modern context, valid then as it is valid now. All of this technology, all of this biology, all of this DNA, all of this messenger RNA discussion that we have entered into for many months now and published in the pages of Entangled magazine regarding the vaccine and the mark of the beast. All of this is corruption. And God will make all things new. As in the days of Noah. But this time he's coming back and he will destroy with fire. He will burn the elements. And we can put into that category of elements evil and all of the malevolent applications of technologies that otherwise could have been used purely for benevolent purposes. But that's not the nature of Satan. There's nothing benevolent about him. Therefore, God comes back with fire, much like you do with any biohazard. You burn it. Verse 8, But to the cowardly and unbelieving, and abominable, and murderers, and sexually immoral, and sorcerers, and idolaters and all liars. Their place will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur. This is the second death. And we are seeing the manifestations of this. We are seeing the public officials that lie, including Dr. Anthony Fauci. We see the sorcerers. That label I would apply to those that in a malevolent fashion, knowing that the work that they're doing in the scientific arena, in all of the scientific disciplines, ultimately are being weaponized against humanity. They are sorcerers. They are modern day sorcerers, modern day alchemists. What they are participating in, the mechanisms that they're employing, date back thousands of years. There's nothing new under the sun. Yet in their hubris, in their pride, they think that they are making new discoveries. They think that in their worship of Lucifer, those that are driving these agendas in science, those that are driving the weaponization of what could be used to help people, those are the sorcerers. Those are the ones that God sees. We talked about this in the last live stream. This was Project Rooftop. Shout the truth from and proclaim the truth from the rooftop. The good news. The salvation by way of Jesus Christ. But God reveals it all. He reveals what the sorcerers are doing in the dark. He punishes the idolaters, including those that will take the mark of the beast in their pledge of allegiance, their idolatry to the beast. Proud to wear the mark of the beast, hateful of those that refuse to take the mark of the beast. They are the ones who will find their place in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, the second death. But we are to be encouraged. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying in verse 3, "Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the former things have passed away." That's what we look forward to. This is why we look upward. This is why we cast our face towards the face of God. God created us, created our DNA and our RNA, created us in his image because he wants to dwell with us. He wants to commune with us. He wants us to worship him. He wants us to praise him for his creation of us, for the creation of the entire cosmos and universe. And yet Satan hates God and hates his creation, hates the fact that he's been cast out from heaven, that he's been separated from God, separated from the knowledge that God refuses to share with Satan. And Satan is left with just a glimpse of the blueprint that God employed in making everything. The reflection of that glimpse by Satan is the technology that we see today that is employed in a weaponized, malevolent fashion. You see, Satan is not omniscient and omnipotent. He doesn't know what God knows. He thinks he does in his hubris, and thus we see him trying to change God's creation, change our DNA by way of our RNA, terraforming the entire planet bringing in technologies that are born out of forbidden knowledge. Forbidden by God because God loves us and was protecting us just as we protect our children, withholding knowledge that they're too young to handle. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, verse 1. For the first heaven and earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. We're going home soon, folks. We will be part of the new Jerusalem. We have a great deal to look forward to. It's too easy to be, and I'm guilty of this, it's too easy to get caught up in the examination of the technology, the examination of COVID, the examination of the plans of the CDC, and walk away in despair, thinking that all is lost, thinking that evil predominates. But it doesn't. Yes, it's prolific. Yes, we see evil everywhere now. But it is not predominant. God is. His Son, Jesus Christ, is. The Holy Spirit is predominant. And we are equipped with the full armor of God and the most powerful weapon system on the planet, which is prayer, which is facilitated through the Holy Spirit and the intercessory action of Jesus Christ between us and our Creator. We're going to go to the playbook in just a moment. I direct your attention to some of the postings within the Patreon posting system. Those of you that are on Twitch but are not patrons, I apologize, but we'll go ahead and read some of this information. I just posted before we went on the air that the spokesperson for Health and Human Services in the United States, Michael Caputo, has been placed on a two-month leave of absence. Apparently he was making social media videos that accused government scientists of sedition. This comes to us by way of CNN reports. In the private Facebook Live video, Caputo referred to a number of conspiracy theories. It adds, he, for instance, accused government scientists of forming a resistance unit at the CDC and prevention for the CDC Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and predicted there would be violence following the upcoming U.S. presidential election, as ABC News reports. These people cannot allow America to get better, nor can they allow America to hear good news. It must be all bad news from now until the election. Frankly, ladies and gentlemen, that's sedition, Caputo said in his video, according to CNN. HHS has announced that Caputo will now be taking a 2-month leave of absence and that Paul Alexander, an advisor to Caputo, will also be leaving the department. ABC News notes that both Caputo and Alexander have reportedly pressured the CDC to make changes to scientific reports. I applaud Michael Caputo. We are going to do much the same right here. CDC Playbook. We're going to examine this in some detail this evening. You can click on the link there from Patreon messaging, where I sent the link for this live stream. COVID-19 vaccination program, interim playbook for jurisdiction operations. CDC, September 16th, yesterday. I'll read the table of contents briefly here. I'm going to pull just a few things out of this. I hope you will take the time to go through this in detail on your own. It is very telling. I will give you the highlights, the things that jump off the page with me. Strike a chord with me, and we will apply the 180 technique to reveal what is really going on here. So they are providing an executive summary with preparedness planning, public health preparedness planning, improvement planning, the COVID-19 vaccination program planning, their organizational structure, their phased approach to COVID-19 vaccination, potentially limited COVID-19 vaccine doses available would be phase 1, phase 2, large number of doses available, supply likely to meet demand, and then phase 3, likely they will have sufficient supply, and then guidance and reference materials. Critical populations. Identifying and estimating critical populations. Estimating population groups for initial COVID-19 vaccination distribution during phase 1. And then describing and locating critical critical populations. And then moving on to vaccine provider recruitment and enrollment. So those that will be providing the vaccinations, they're going to be recruiting and enrolling those providers and federal partners. Understanding the jurisdiction's COVID-19 vaccine administration capacity. Vaccine allocation, ordering, distribution, and inventory management. Okay. Now, before I read the rest of the table of contents, I want to get the chat room back here where I can view it. And let's see what is happening here. Okay, there we are. Let's focus on the logistics. In the past, I have provided to you an overview summary of what is known as the cold chain, CHAIN, cold chain. The chain of distribution or distribution chain. With typical vaccines, and this is what they're describing, are typical vaccines in this planning document, this game plan, this playbook. They are describing the distribution by way of a cold chain of a vaccine that is requiring delivery, administration by way of a hypodermic needle. Thus, they are treating the vaccine or multiple types of vaccines in exactly the same manner that they have treated past vaccines. In other words, and I'll share with you the temperatures a little bit later that illustrate that there's more than one type of vaccine they're anticipating because there are different temperature ranges. But the point here is that typical vaccines, including over the past many years, the flu vaccines, the seasonal flu vaccines, must be kept cold within a temperature range. From the time that it is produced by the manufacturer, during the entire time of shipment, of transit within the supply chain, and right up to the point of administration by hypodermic needle to a patient. It must be kept cold, and it has to be documented that way. They must have properly trained personnel to maintain the cold chain. It can never be broken, and it must be documented that it's never been broken. Otherwise, they have to throw out the vaccine. Okay? So, what's the big deal about the cold chain? Refrigeration is not required for a vaccine that is delivered by way of a microneedle array patch. This playbook makes no mention of the microneedle array patch. There's no plan for it. But as I said in my opening monologue, what they are describing in this playbook will be an abysmal failure. Okay? And they call it an interim playbook. It's quite detailed. But this is what they're putting out to the media and to the public. That it's going to be routine, that it is going to be a typical vaccine, one that must be kept cold. And yet, with all of the documentation we have shared with you, all of the white papers, all of the pharmaceutical companies that are employing not a traditional vaccine that must be refrigerated, what is typically referred to as an attenuated, that's weakened, attenuated form of the virus. That's what must be refrigerated. That is old school. No one is working with attenuated vaccine delivery for COVID-19. They are all working on either DNA, vector-based delivery of a DNA-modified virus, modifying the genome sequence of the actual virus itself, which was sequenced in January, at least the full genomic sequence, if one actually exists, was published in January of this year. And we've shared that with you many times. It's the one that contains the 4 HIV inserts. Now, in terms of public information, COVID-19, a clean, unadulterated, uncontaminated sample of COVID-19 has never been genomically sequenced. Now, they may have done that, and probably did, prior to its release. They would have to, because this is a man-made construct, and there are many scientific papers that have come out that we've shared with you that illustrate, that state unequivocally, this is a man-made genomic sequence. This is a man-made virus. Therefore, they sequenced it. But whether or not they released the actual genomic sequence of COVID-19 is highly doubtful. But what they have released in terms of a genomic sequence containing the 4 HIV inserts of short genomic sequences themselves indicates very clearly that in order to develop a vaccine, it must be DNA or messenger RNA based. It cannot be a weakened, attenuated version of the virus that must be refrigerated. None of the literature that we have read, that we've presented to you, that we've published in the pages of Entangled magazine, that we've presented in this live stream, none of the DNA or RNA-based vaccines from places like Moderna require refrigeration. This is why the microneedle array patch will be the final definitive mechanism for delivery of whatever one vaccine or multiple types of vaccines that they deem appropriate for distribution and administration to the global 7.8 billion population. Does not require refrigeration. DNA and RNA based don't. Those are the only two leading avenues of research for one or more vaccines for COVID-19. So I chose this scripture this evening regarding liars and deceivers and sorcerers because this document from the CDC is an absolute lie. Okay? This is just to give the media something to put out to the public as a stopgap measure, to mislead the public, to divert, here's your 180, to divert the public and, let's say, alternative media types like myself and my wife, to divert the public attention away from the DNA, RNA-based research, to divert the public attention away from the real research that is going on. And why would they want to do that? One is to discredit people like myself. There are many medical professionals and scientists, and now the spokesperson, former spokesperson from Health and Human Services, saying this vaccine or vaccines will be based on DNA or messenger RNA. Those are the two leading predominant methodologies of research underway right now. This CDC playbook is meant to divert the public attention away from whistleblowers, medical professionals, scientists, government officials, people like myself, a layperson, blowing the whistle, saying, no, the vaccine will not be like the vaccine you've had in the past for the seasonal flu, or for mumps, measles, and rubella, or other vaccines. All past vaccines required refrigeration, required this integrity of the cold chain, distribution and delivery system, and were delivered by hypodermic needle. They do not want people paying any attention to DNA and RNA research, nor to the microneedle array, quantum dot equipped, luciferase embedded, hydrogel equipped, 5G biosensor enabled delivery system. Okay? So there's a very long 180 for you. But we're going to examine this bold-faced lie from the CDC. Sorry, I got to get the PDF open here again. Give me just a second. Okay. So here they're talking in section 8 in this paper, COVID-19 vaccine storage and handling. So they go through and they talk about the cold chain system, just as I just outlined for you. We won't have to read through all of their details, but it's in here. Don't have to dig deeply to find it. It's very plainly laid out in this playbook. I'd refer you to page 27 in the document. I'm going to read a little of this for those that don't have access to the document itself. Let's do this. Let's start on page 18, vaccination provider enrollment. To receive and administer COVID-19 vaccine, constituent products and ancillary supplies, vaccination provider facilities and organization must enroll in the federal COVID-19 vaccination program coordinated through their jurisdiction's immunization program. Enrolled COVID-19 vaccination providers must be credentialed, licensed in the jurisdiction where vaccination takes place. Number one, they will be administering COVID-19 vaccine in accordance with the ACIP recommendations. Within 24 hours of administering a dose of COVID-19 vaccine and adjuvant, if applicable, record in the vaccine recipient's record and report required information to the relevant state, local, or territorial public health authority. The provider must maintain the vaccine administration records for at least 3 years following vaccination, or longer if required by state and local, These records must be made available to any federal, state, local, or territorial public health department to the extent authorized by law. They will not sell or seek reimbursement for COVID-19 vaccine, syringes, needles, or otherwise. So no reimbursement for COVID-19 vaccine. They will administer the COVID-19 vaccine regardless of the vaccine recipient's ability to pay. So this is a no-charge vaccine program. Provide an emergency use authorization, EUA, fact sheet or vaccination information statement, VIS, as applicable to each vaccine recipient, parent, legal representative prior to vaccination. Comply with CDC requirements for vaccine management, including, here it comes, including storage, handling, temperature monitoring at all times, complying with jurisdiction's instructions for dealing with temperature excursions, and monitoring expiration dates. Providers must keep all records related to COVID-19 vaccine management for a minimum of 3 years. Report COVID-19 vaccines and adjuvants that were unused, spoiled, expired, or wasted as required by the jurisdiction's immunization program. Comply with federal instruction regarding disposal of unused vaccine. Report adverse events to the vaccine adverse event reporting system. Provide a completed COVID-19 vaccination record card to every vaccine recipient, parent, legal guardian. Okay, failure of any enrolled COVID-19 vaccine provider, organization, or vaccination location under its authority to meet the conditions of the agreement may impact whether COVID-19 vaccine product orders are fulfilled. All right. I'm going to skip through some of this. We're getting to the temperatures. The profile form includes a field where the brand, model, type of storage unit is to be listed, requiring an attestation from the medical pharmacy director or vaccine coordinator that each unit will maintain the relevant required temperatures. For example, refrigerated between 2 and 8 degrees centigrade, or frozen, which is minus 15 to 25, minus 25 centigrade, or ultra cold, minus 60 to minus 80 centigrade. Now, I've never heard of a vaccine that required ultra cold, but again, I'm not a medical professional, I'm just a layperson. But this is the first time I've ever read in all the vaccine literature that I've been exposed to the requirement for ultra cold refrigeration of a vaccine. That struck me as really odd. Okay. scan down through this a little bit. Just a lot of requirements for the providers. Then there's vaccine provider training for the handling, the documentation, the reporting, all those good things. And then the role of the commercial and federal partners. So typical government document, very thorough, almost painstakingly thorough, but it's all much ado about nothing, because this entire document right here, it says, when assessing vaccine administration capacity, other important factors to consider include, number one, COVID-19 vaccine storage capacity at a given location, the quantity of COVID-19 vaccine that can be stored, storage equipment, and temperature monitoring devices that meet CDC requirements. So, again, none of this is necessary. This entire document is completely irrelevant when you are talking about DNA and RNA-based vaccines. They do not require refrigeration. They are specifically designed to be robust, to be embedded in the quantum dots of the microneedle arrays, and to be delivered by the hydrogel within the microneedle array delivery system. By way of review, the hydrogels themselves contain magnetic nanoparticles, MNPs. These are magnetic such that when an electromagnetic impulse is directed at these magnetic particles embedded in the hydrogel is then provided locomotion. It can also change the morphology, the shape of the hydrogel, typically into spirals. It can then provide three-dimensionally within the body directions of travel. The hydrogel is propelled and steered. It is then able to penetrate the blood-brain barrier. It can penetrate through the walls of the capillaries, arteries, and veins of the body. It can enter the brain, enter the neurons. It can enter any cell in the body. The hydrogel will deliver, whether it's a DNA or an RNA-based vaccine, it will deliver its payload by penetrating the outer membrane of the cell, traveling through the cytoplasm, and then penetrating the membrane surrounding the nucleus of the cell. There it will deliver its DNA-modifying genomic sequence. Whether it's DNA-based or RNA-based, these are sequences of nucleic acids. These are short segments of genomes. More clearly said, more accurately said, a genomic sequence, a short sequence of RNA or double helix DNA. RNA gives rise to the double helix DNA. In either case, once they arrive within the nucleus of the cell, the DNA of that person, the host DNA as it's referred to, is permanently changed. And this has been presented, attested to, published by medical professionals and scientists. Okay? This isn't just my opinion. This is not just my conjecture. This is factual reporting. We've published this now in 4 editions of our monthly magazine, Entangled. Patrons receive subscription to Entangled Magazine, but you can subscribe to it without joining Patreon for $30 a year. And you get every single back issue of Entangled Magazine to the date of its founding in June of 2017. There's almost 4 years of the magazine that you receive with your subscription. We've made free to the public June, July, and August editions of Entangled Magazine. In this September issue, if you would like a copy, we have included at the end of the September issue a PDF, which we covered in the last live stream on Tuesday. Okay? That PDF is Project Rooftop. That is a summary of the microneedle array vaccine delivery system. It is a summary of why the microneedle array patch delivery system of the coming vaccine or multiple types of vaccines, all of which will be either DNA-based or RNA-based, both of which change the host DNA, qualifying this as the mark of the beast. The June edition of Entangled Magazine was specific to the mark of the beast. July was the seal of God. The August edition was the abomination that causes desolation, which was the modifying of the human body, which is the temple of the Holy Spirit, the abomination of desolation of that temple, our body. In September is the new Jurassic Park, which again is all about DNA modification, chimeras, the technology that is attempting to destroy God's creation. I say attempting because God is not going to allow this to continue to its full fruition. Remember, he cuts the days short, otherwise no man would survive. Satan is, through the mark of the beast, through the DNA modification, attempting to separate man from God. Because those that take the mark of the beast, as you well know, there's much more to it than just whether or not you're able to buy and sell. So much more. This is the control of the minds of humanity. This is the enslavement of humanity. But we know that those that take the mark of the beast suffer for 5 months. They are racked with sores and boils, the side effects of the vaccine. They seek death, but they will not find it for 5 months. Okay? Satan, through the genetic modification, is condemning a person's soul, not just destroying, not just enslaving the body, but condemning the soul to perdition, which is his goal. He wants to kill the body, and he wants to steal the souls of every person created by God, which is every person. That's his plan, plain and simple. But the world doesn't see that, and that's the mission that Kathleen, my wife, and I find ourselves assigned. We are in God's army, as are you that are saved. And our mission is to spread the gospel, spread the warning to those that have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. And we're trying to provide you through Project Rooftop tools that you can use to witness to others as we are trying to witness to others. Okay? So, when the CDC says that they are setting up a system to distribute and vaccinate that requires the refrigeration, I know I'm harping on this, but this is what clearly shows that this playbook is smoke and mirrors. When they talk about refrigerating a COVID-19 vaccine, they're lying, because they're not talking about DNA and RNA based vaccines, of which those do not require refrigeration. So it's a useless document. But there are very few who, like you, are independent thinkers, critical thinkers, and can see for yourself because you are armed with the foreknowledge. You've been given for months now the truth about how they are developing the vaccines and the result of the administration of these vaccines, because there will be multiple versions. You know that when you read that document, you can see what I see, that it's a complete fabrication. It doesn't apply to the vaccines that are under development. So it begs the question, why publish this in the first place? It's long, it's detailed, it's extensive, but really it's a document that would apply to the seasonal flu vaccine, not a COVID-19 vaccine. It would apply to an attenuated, a weakened form of a flu virus, not to COVID-19. There has never been any discussion about utilizing an attenuated route for development of a vaccine for COVID-19. Okay? That's Model T, as I like to say. That is Model T technology. It's no longer applicable. All of the pharmaceutical companies, I mentioned this in the last live stream, I'll say it again. All of the pharmaceutical companies are now moving in the direction and are deeply involved in utilizing the body as a drug factory. In other words, stimulating the body's endocrine system, hormonal system, and its immune system to produce drugs, so to speak, from within the body without anything being administered from the outside into the body. Nothing external. How is that accomplished? Genetic modification. All of the pharmaceutical companies are moving away from manufacturing plants for attenuated vaccines, weakened forms, moving away from the use of eggs to develop a flu vaccine, which just logically, logistically doesn't even come into the thought process when you're talking about inoculating 7.8 billion people. No, they are all moving in the direction of genetically modifying the body so as to produce drugs. And they always talk about cancer, Alzheimer's. They try to paint a benevolent spin, put a benevolent spin to stimulating the body genetically to produce the response that they determine is necessary to fight diseases and deformities. But they really have very little appreciation for the side effects. And what I mean by side effects, I mean the changes to the genomic sequence side effects. Not just, people that have fevers and seizures and cardiac arrhythmias and difficulty breathing. I don't mean those kinds of side effects. What I'm talking about are the side effects within the DNA and RNA themselves. because man does not really have a complete picture of the DNA of the human body. They really do not know. They've only been scratching the surface. And it goes beyond DNA. It's RNA-based drug development, body response development. So any discussion about any other type of vaccine beyond DNA and RNA is meant to mislead the recipient of that information. It's a lie. The pharmaceutical companies, the universities, the research labs are all focused on DNA and RNA, but the real focus, the primary focus, is on RNA, because remember, RNA gives rise to DNA. So it is really all coming down to RNA, RNA, RNA. If you want to do your own research, which I certainly encourage, focus in the area of RNA, specifically messenger RNA and complementary DNA. That's where the real definitive work is being done regarding stimulating the human body, triggering the systems of the human body to produce certain results. The pharmaceutical companies are moving away from injecting drugs. You, through oral administration, taking drugs, or through inhalation with nasal sprays, or through the eyes, through the absorption, or on the epidermis, on the skin, through absorption and assimilation of drugs from an external route. It is all internal. And that internal focus is on RNA research. That's where it's going. That's where it's at. That's where the COVID-19 vaccine, its focus is on. Okay? Again, there's plenty of information in the pages of Entangled magazine that is straight out of the articles, straight out of the peer-reviewed papers, providing links to these sources way beyond what I present here in the live streams. The extreme detail for those that want to spend the time looking at those details, looking at the language, the scientific language that explains all of this. What I'm doing is translating and distilling it down so that it is something that is manageable and palatable. Okay? Okay. So again, from this playbook, they're talking about a phased approach to COVID-19 vaccination. So this is leading us to what I was saying earlier in the opening monologue, and that is, this will lead to a complete failure in the initial phases, phase 1, 2, and 3, in the initial phase of vaccines being delivered to people. Again, distribution is supposed to be set up by October 1st. The vaccine itself is supposed to be available by November 1st. This is all according to President Trump. Therefore, they have had a vaccine all along. They're just trying to make billions and billions of dollars for all of these pharmaceutical companies and universities and private laboratories during these past ensuing months. It's all about money. But they've always had the vaccine. And it's RNA based. Even the DNA is old school approach. It's really RNA that's leading the way in terms of the vaccine. And I would say that whatever vaccine that they determine to be the best to be the singular best will be RNA based. In the meantime, with phase 1, 2, and 3 in this playbook, it's very clear that the general public, at least with respect to the United States population, the jurisdiction of the CDC, that the general public at large represent the guinea pigs, the lab rats. Okay? I'm going to take just a moment to try to dig through this document to something specific I wanted to share with you on this. Give me just a second. Take a little pause. There's a part in this document that talks about multiple vaccines and almost a trial and error of these multiple vaccines. I think it's important that I share that with you. Again, just let me reinforce this again. I'm just scanning through this and I want to read this one more time to you. Certain COVID-19 vaccine products, okay, that's multiples. We're not talking about one vaccine. So 180 that. We're talking about vaccine products in the multiple. When you 180 that, that means that this document is a lie, because there will be only one vaccine. That's what they've been pushing for. That's why there's this warp speed development. This is why there's the competition between pharmaceutical companies utilizing different research and development tracks, because they're all vying for that huge financial windfall resulting from their singular vaccine being declared as the one and only vaccine for 7.8 billion people. Imagine the profits. So when this document speaks in terms of multiples of vaccine products, at the very least, it's very disingenuous. Certain COVID-19 vaccine products, such as those with ultra-cold temperature requirements, will be shipped directly from the manufacturer to the vaccine provider site. If redistributing vaccine, jurisdictions must adhere to all cold chain requirements and should limit transport of frozen or ultra-cold vaccine products. Again, RNA, DNA-based vaccines do not require this. So this is complete fabrication on their part, this whole playbook. But it shows you the multiples of vaccines. So where does this lead us to? The failure, the planned failure within the modus operandi of the problem, reaction, solution of the Hegelian dialectic. It has to fail initially. And I said it in the opening monologue. Why does it have to fail? Why is it planned? Because they have to get people into such a state of anxiety and fear that they will demand a solution. I said this in 2013, January, very first public video recording I ever did, first public interview. January 2013, I said exactly that with respect to the MERS coronavirus. They have to get people stirred up and so angry that they will demand a solution. You could not force this on people. They're already trying to. We're already seeing the backlash from that, the pushback. I'm pushing back against it. But they are trying to push this on people, and they know that it won't work. It's like trying to push a rope from one end forward, or to push a spaghetti noodle forward. You can't do it. But if you grab the other end of the noodle or grab the other end of the rope and pull it, it works very well. So in this case, people demanding the vaccine is pulling on the rope, pulling on the noodle. Plays right into their real playbook, not the one that I'm sharing with you tonight. The real playbook is the Hegelian dialectic. So this will fail. These multiple vaccines that they're going to try to distribute that require cold chain refrigeration, require all of these people to be trained to properly maintain that cold chain supply chain. And it will be a complete miserable failure. Not just because of the supply chain, but also because the vaccine that they're trying to administer has no effect on COVID-19. It's not a cure. Therefore, again, ramping up the demand. Then they will roll out. Okay, I hope you're following this. Then they will roll out the mark of the beast. Then they will roll out the microneedle array vaccine patch with the real vaccine embedded in it. That's how it's going to play out. It's so easy to figure out. It's not that big a deal. Back on September 12th, I shared this with you in the patrons messaging system. This article from CNN, 8,000 cargo jets needed to transport COVID-19 vaccines. As global pharmaceutical companies race to complete their COVID-19 vaccine trials, the logistics that will be required to deliver them to all corners of the world are coming into focus, and it will be a mission like no other. According to the International Air Transport Association, providing a single dose of the vaccine to 7.8 billion people will require the use of 8,000 Boeing 747 cargo aircraft, and planning needs to begin now. This is dated September 12th. Okay. Safely delivering COVID-19 vaccines will be the mission of the century for the global air cargo industry, says IATA's Director General and CEO. Okay? Well, if you take all of the cargo aircraft of the delivery of the cargo companies, DHL, FedEx, etc., including Amazon Prime, they already have 8,000 cargo aircraft, and they don't necessarily have to be Boeing 747s. They're just using that as an example of the size of the aircraft. And of course the military, C-130, C-140s, all kinds of cargo aircraft in the military branches all over the world. There's many more than 8,000, but that's the number that they are just throwing out there. It probably isn't even realistic. But do you think, when we look at this planning document from the CDC, that these cargo aircraft are going to be able to maintain the cold chain environment for a vaccine? Yes, they can put things into refrigerated shipping containers. They can put them into styrofoam containers with dry ice. You don't have to have refrigeration on the aircraft itself. It can just be the shipping containers themselves. But really, 8,000 cargo aircraft, the microneedle array will, and we shared the documents with you that even said this. The microneedle array patch, it's just a Band-Aid. It's just an adhesive strip. These can be mailed. They don't have to go by cargo aircraft. Okay? Not in a refrigerated manner. They can go by cargo aircraft in cardboard boxes that are not even insulated and distributed. They could pitch them out the back end of a C-130 with parachutes on a pallet. Okay? They could toss them from the back of aircraft like leaflets in the air. And the scared, panicked public would scurry across the countryside, gathering up their microneedle array patches and gleefully applying them to the right hand or the forehead of themselves and their loved ones. You can just see it now. What a movie that would make. What a ridiculous, sad movie. Okay? So, I think we've beaten up on the CDC enough. Trying to take this in kind of a measured delivery, kind of a measured manner this evening without beating up on you guys and on the general public and on the government too hard. Just delivering the facts. But here's something that just is, we presented last week, okay? I sent this to the patrons, completely off topic, changing gears. A video from the Secretary of Defense for the United States, Secretary of Defense, regarding directed energy weapons, otherwise known as DEWs. Dutch Sense we credit with having provided the screenshots on the West Coast, California and Oregon, of what appears to be the energy beam, a straight line configuration energy beam, a directed energy beam, originating in Oregon and directed to the California coastline. Now, Dutch does not have, nor do I, definitive proof that directed energy weapons were used in the initiation of the fires on the West Coast, one or more fires. We don't know. But here in this video, the Secretary of Defense is talking openly about the United States already in possession of directed energy weapons, space-based specifically, and warning that Russia and China already are employing space-based, satellite-based, low Earth orbit directed energy weapons. He refers to them as satellite killers, that somehow these directed energy weapons would only be employed against enemy satellites in space, in orbit. But there's nothing to say that these cannot be redirected towards the surface of the Earth itself. So, very interesting that this video just came out. Timing is everything. We still have the fires in Oregon, specifically in the Portland, Oregon area, where I used to live for 20 years. I know those areas very well because I lived in those same neighborhoods where the fires are right now. It is conceivable that directed energy weapons by our own government, false flag, or by enemy states, Russia, China, whomever. That's conjecture on my part. That's not factual reporting. Simply looking at these reports and the timing by the Secretary of Defense. Very odd. Okay? All right, guys. I want to take some questions in the chat room. We're on Twitch, and we have quite a few people in the chat room that are new to these live streams. They typically catch these as a rebroadcast some other time. When we have been simulcasting between YouTube and Twitch for over 3 years now, we have not participated on Twitch within the chat room in a live stream. So I'd like to take some questions perhaps from people who have not had an opportunity to ask me questions directly in a live format. So let's do that. Question is, do the dews follow the contour of the Earth? No. No, these are energies and accelerated particles, I should say, as I outlined in the Thursday live stream last week. When you talk about directed energy weapons, you're really talking about accelerated particles, and the particles themselves have inherent energy. They are accelerated with energy, electromagnetic energy, and therefore they contain energy as well as solid particles themselves. So these are also known as KEWs, kinetic energy weapons. But the media tends to, and as we see with the Secretary of Defense, who's speaking to the media and the public at large, they use the overarching label of directed energy weapon, DEW. Okay? These are straight line, and they do not follow the curvature of the Earth. And I'll cite an example of this from Dr. Judy Woods, What Happened to the Towers, her book, Dr. Judy Woods, indicating that the let me correct that. I don't think Dr. Woods indicated this, but this was research that I developed after I read her book. The zoning requirements, the zoning restrictions on the height of the buildings between the Twin Towers in New York and Brookhaven National Laboratory with their relativistic heavy ion collider, synchrotron collider, accelerator and particle facility. There's a straight line, horizontal. The buildings were kept short in height so as not to interfere. And this goes back years and years of zoning restrictions, long before the Twin Towers were even born, or built, I should say, in anticipation of a directed energy weapon from Brookhaven directed at the Twin Towers in a straight line, horizontal, not following the curvature of the Earth, because these were directed at the Twin Towers, and the Twin Towers, as the engineers have shown, the concrete was mixed with nanothermite particles, and the nanothermite, according to Dr. Judy Woods, is what led to the demolition, the pulverization, the atomization, the dustification of the towers. Those nanothermite explosives were triggered by a directed energy weapon from Brookhaven National Laboratory. In a synchrotron, again, go back to last Thursday where I talked about synchrotrons and directed energy weapons. Coming out of a ring-based, circular-based synchrotron, particles in a curved pathway are then released into a straight beam line. Basic Newtonian law, those beams want to continue traveling in a straight line unless they are acted upon by an external force. In the case of a synchrotron, bending magnets, superconducting bending magnets, cause the particles that otherwise would travel in a straight line and that includes a horizontal straight line, bends them into a curved trajectory. But once released from those magnets, they enter a straight beam line, 3D straight, okay, in all three axes straight, and it maintains a horizontal direction of travel, the particle and the energy in a straight horizontal configuration, okay? So that's kind of a long answer to your question, but I wanted to provide the physics in that answer, okay? Let's see if I am missing anything. Looking at the chat room for questions. Okay. I'm speed reading the chat room here. Will they still roll this vaccine out by January, the messenger RNA vaccine? It's hard to say, They were saying that the vaccine would be ready. President Trump was saying initially that it would be January, February, perhaps March, but certainly, he said, certainly in the first quarter of 2021, the vaccine would be available. He did not get into talking about DNA or messenger RNA vaccine. However, when it comes out, whether it's November, December, January, it will be a messenger RNA eventually. Again, the point of tonight's presentation is that the initial rollout will be a failure. The initial vaccines will be a failure. Then they will roll out the messenger RNA vaccine when people demand the solution to the government botching the first phase, second phase, maybe even third phase of the first vaccine, which is designed not to be effective, to stir up the masses, to demand, and that's when the messenger RNA comes in. That probably would require something like a January, February, or March timeline, okay? Takes time to screw up. Let's put it that way. Takes time to screw it all up. All right. Will the initial vaccine with normal needle be the mark of the beast? No. And I appreciate you're just joining us in the chat room. No, the initial vaccine with the normal needle will not be the mark of the beast. That does not change your DNA. It is when the microneedle array delivers the vaccine that it will change a person's DNA. Okay? Another question is, then does that mean the magnetic field will have an effect then? Not sure what you're asking. Let me go back up sector and see if you indicated. Not sure what you mean, sector 16, about the magnetic field. The magnetic field, by way of a 5G magnetic effect, okay? This is the electromagnetic spectrum. We're not talking just about magnets. We're talking about the electromagnetic spectrum, specifically the 5G spectrum, influencing, propelling, changing the shape of, and directing in its direction of travel the hydrogels delivering the messenger RNA. Okay, that magnetic field, so to speak, as you're calling it, would affect the delivery of the vaccine within the body. Now, post-delivery, the delivered microneedle array system, the delivered vaccine, and the quantum dots and the microneedle array that remains in the skin function as a biosensor, which is connected by way of its embedded antenna system within the quantum dots, within the embedded remaining portion of the needles. That's an antenna system for sending and receiving data transmissions over the 5G spectrum. Okay? Yeah, again, Perry, it would be correct to say the needle versions of the vaccine are, as you say, quote, safe as far as salvation safe. Yes. It's the patch version that is dangerous. Yes. Okay. Can they still put hydrogel in the conventional vaccine? Yes. Hydrogel can be delivered. It has been used for many years through a hypodermic needle delivery system. Yes, they can put hydrogel in a conventional vaccine. Hydrogel was designed for vaccine delivery. And not just vaccine, but in the case of cancer, hydrogels carry cancer treatment medications, okay, as well as other disease issues. There were dews on drones. Check out the satellite. Toggle time forward to 10-minute blocks to see the dew streaks appear. Okay, I will do that. I will check that out on Zoom Earth. Okay. Dews on drones, absolutely. Okay. Looks like you guys are digging up some more evidence. Josh, please send that link to me by email if you would, please, regarding the dews on drones. Okay. Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't take any vaccine, whether it's salvation safe or not. I'm just reading the chat room. Don't take any vaccines. We don't even know what is in the seasonal flu vaccines, okay? Are vaccine volunteers required to sign a non-disclosure agreement? No one seems to know. Well, I don't know about an NDA. I don't know. I would assume volunteers in the testing phase, okay? A non-disclosure agreement in any trial of any pharmaceutical medication, DNA, RNA, attenuated, it doesn't matter. Yes, they would be required, the volunteers certainly would be required to sign a non-disclosure agreement. They don't want people that are having adverse reactions talking to the media. Okay. Again, I'm reading the chat room just so people know what it is, why I'm pausing so much. Okay, first round, November, second round, March. QR codes and immunity passports on smartphones coming very soon. Do you feel we're okay until the microneedle array or the messenger RNA and the patches? I do think we're all right, but again, I'm stressing, don't take any vaccines. Whether it's, delivered by a needle with a hypodermic carrying the vaccine or otherwise. The adjuvants and the preservatives like mercury, this has been documented for years, a neurotoxin being included in a seasonal flu vaccine to extend its shelf life. Okay, do you want a neuro vaccine? I'm not picking on you, I'm just saying, do you want a neurotoxic material in your body? I'm just advocating, I'm not a medical professional, I'm just advocating don't take any vaccines, okay? That way you are safe. Are there any good guys out there talking about the vaccine? Please read Entangled magazine, and then you will see the doctors and the researchers that we have cited that are speaking out. I would go to June, July, August, and September. Entangled magazine are very focused on that, and we'll show you the people that are speaking out against this. Okay? So will the initial vaccine change one's DNA? No, it will not. The microneedle array vaccine will change a person's DNA. But still, I'm recommending, just as a layperson, not a medical professional, I'm saying don't take a vaccine of any kind. Yeah, the whole issue of the aborted baby tissue, they're talking, these are T cells. The reason that they're using aborted fetal tissue, baby tissue fragments, T cells, is because there's less chance of alteration of the T cells, less chance of contamination, less distortion of the DNA by taking fetal tissue rather than T cells from a cadaver of an adult or an older child. Taking cadaver T cells are contaminated. This is why they're focusing in on the aborted baby tissue fragments, okay? T cells. They're not, they're, in their description of it, these are not contaminated cells, they're not modified cells, okay? Could the initial vaccine have nanotechnology in the mix? Anything to cause people to make them more compliant to a future vaccine? Yes, I would say that that is very feasible. Nanotechnology is what we're talking about when we talk about genetic modification leading to the body acting as a drug factory. This is nanotechnology. When we talk about nanotechnology, we're talking about a billionth of a meter in scale. We're talking about things that are 5 to 11, sometimes 20 or 30 nanometers in diameter. That's all that nanotechnology means. When you hear nanotechnology, what they're really talking about is RNA and DNA technology. Okay? So, are there nanobots, that kind of nanotechnology, in a vaccine? Certainly. They can be delivered in a vaccine. There's no reason they cannot be. I've maintained since 2013 that we all have dormant nanoparticles in our body that will be triggered by an electromagnetic, in this case a 5G signal, causing those dormant nanoparticles to replicate, to self-replicate. Again, I said that in January 2013. Now today, when we talk about the body functioning as a drug factory, we are talking about replication of nanoparticles within the body. Okay? So it is a replication process when we talk about pharmacological factory in the body. Could they include that and deliver it in the vaccine? This is exactly what the pharmaceutical companies have been doing. The pharmaceutical companies have been delivering nanotechnology in the vaccines. And this is why I'm advocating, don't take any vaccine, okay? Why they put mercury in is to prevent the unknown fungal antigen from growing. I would agree with you. Again, it's a preservative. Yep. Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome for the answer. I'm speed reading again, trying to catch up with you guys. Aborted fetal cells, mercury, aluminum, E. coli, EDTA, polysorbate 80, animal parts, sorbitol, latex rubber, barium, MSG, formaldehyde, detergent, etc., etc., etc. Thank you, Dee Dee, for posting that. Absolutely. It's just loaded with garbage. Absolutely. And they don't there's no full disclosure. They don't tell us what's in any of the vaccines that we take. Okay. All right, guys, I think we'll go ahead and wrap this up a little bit early. Many of the live streams the last couple of weeks have been running 2.5 hours almost, so I kind of want to try to tailor that, pull back a little bit, and try to end these within 2 hours if we can, because I'm respectful of your time, and unless I have something absolutely pertinent that I need to bring to your attention, I don't want to just needlessly drag things out just to fill 2 hours, okay? Question from Perry: what do you think they will do with the few tribes that haven't had contact with the outside world? They'll immunize them. They'll force them. Everybody. Look at Benjamin Netanyahu's statement 2 months ago. 100% compliance with the vaccine in Israel. There is no opting out, Benjamin Netanyahu said. President Trump has said essentially the same thing. Okay? Nobody gets a pass on this. And that goes for, you know, the pygmies in the Amazon. I don't care who you're talking about. Everybody's getting it. Bill Gates keeps, you know, getting excited or frustrated, saying, "Oh, we may only be able to deliver the vaccine to 80% of the population." He wants 100% compliance. Satan wants 100% compliance. So no one's going to be left behind on this one, okay? All right. So thank you all for, again, making the migration over to Twitch. We're going to stay on Twitch for the foreseeable future. And thank you very much. Thank you very much for your patience and understanding, and certainly for your support. And I won't say her name, but I shout out to Sweden. There's a lovely lady in Sweden that sent us an email today, and I won't say anything more than that, but just a big shout out. You know who you are. Kathleen and I responded to you today, and I want to send just a huge hug of thank you to our new friend in Sweden. Thank you. Let's see. Somebody is saying, do you realize joining your live stream impacts people that watch? Their family is upset at us watching. It's okay, I will still watch. I'm sure it causes a lot of consternation in households when you and you're separate, you're a contrarian to what the rest of the family is thinking and believing. Yes. Yep, it does impact people that watch, and my prayers to you. I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm laughing. I'm right there with you. I get it. It definitely, we experience it with our own family members and our own friends, and I've lost a lot of so-called friends by speaking out like this, and that's when you learn who your real friends are, and that's when you make a lot of new real friends, just like all of you here in the chat room and that are listening now and will listen later to this live stream. You guys are all family. This is our congregation, if you will. This is our fellowship, and we love you guys. We thank you, and we pray for all of you as a whole, as a group, and some that, you know, ask for specific prayer requests. We are humbled by those requests, and we always follow through on them. So God bless you all. Lord willing, we'll get back together with you on Sunday. Good night.